All right, let's talk money. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Katie Does Travel. My name is Katie and I am a solo female backpacker in her 30s, here to show that solo travel can be meaningful and fun no matter your age. So be sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and follow my social media channels to follow my travels in real time. So if you've been following my channel for a bit, you know that I spent 3 months in Australia from late April until late July of this year. And I had an incredible 3 months, probably the best 3 months of my life, in addition to the 2 months I spent in Australia last year. And this year I wanted to give a breakdown of my budget. Now, typical disclaimer here, money is kind of a personal topic, but I do think it needs to be discussed more, not only with travel, but just in salaries, etc. But I just want to be transparent and open with you because Australia is an expensive country to backpack in, and this budget breakdown is no different than pretty much what you would probably expect. Australia is so much more expensive than backpacking, even in Europe or across Europe or in Central or South America or Southeast Asia. But it is so worth the money in my opinion because there's a reason why I went back a second time. So I'm going to break down my budget into various topics. I have an app on my phone. They don't update it anymore, but I've used it since 2018 to track every single purchase. Like I'm talking down to the last cent. I use an app called TripCoin, not sponsored obviously. And again, I don't remember the last time they've actually updated the app, but it is really useful. There are a ton of budgeting apps out there. I definitely recommend picking one, finding one that works for you. This one's just really simplistic and it works really well for me. So I'm going to be breaking down everything I spent this year in Australia, 2024, for 3 months. Now, because I did not do this video last year, I'm also going to compare it to 2023. And it was a little bit of a different trip. I went to different areas, but I also did go to some of the same areas in 2023 and 2024. So now I also want to say this budget is my budget. Your budget will vary. You might spend more, you might spend less. I kind of put myself, this is like your basement, if this is like your bottom, like really budget backpacker, only stays in the largest hostels or hostel rooms, only cooks, doesn't do very many activities or paid activities, compared to like your most bougie traveler, and this is kind of like your flash packer, I would say I'm kind of like here, like maybe like just below flash packer, but I can kind of also go into the flash packer category. But I do try to save money in certain ways, but I also do spend my money, like I spend more money in areas where I find that I'm going to get more benefit and more value out of, and then I will sacrifice some money in other ways. Also, I am 34, so my travel styles have changed throughout the years, and what I would have liked at 18, 19, 20 is going to be very different than what I'm going to prefer in my 30s. So just kind of keep that in mind, but this is just sort of a overall, just general idea. Last disclaimer, if you can hear some sort of noise in the background, I do have laundry going here at my Airbnb. I'm currently in Krakow, Poland, and I did close the door to the kitchen where the washing machine is, but you can kind of hear it. So I do apologize if you can hear that, but I really wanted to film this video. So yeah, so without further ado, I have everything written down. We're gonna just go into it. I'm gonna try to make this video as quick as possible, and I think hopefully you will gain something out of this, and it can help you figure out your budget for your backpacking trip in Australia. Okay, so first things first, I want to talk about what my general budget was. So for each trip, I set a budget of $10,000 US, $10,000 for 2 months, $10,000 for 3 months. This is kind of my standard budget for a lot of trips that are 2 or more months long. I just find that it gives me some wiggle room. But I will say, spoiler alert, Australia is more expensive and I did go over budget. But you'll see why, and I don't necessarily regret it. So now let's get into the first category. The first category was accommodation. So this included any sort of hostels, which were dorms and private rooms, campsites, Airbnbs, etc. I don't believe on either trip in 2023 and 2024 that I stayed in any hotels. No, actually, I take that back. I did stay for one night in a hotel last year along the Great Ocean Road. But it was like more like a motel. Like it was like kind of like I don't want to say like a roadside inn because I feel like people get the wrong idea. It was very basic, but it got the job done, and it was just like one night. But other than that, in Australia, I primarily stay in hostels and then also some campsites when especially I was doing my road trip this year. So for 2024, I spent a total of $2,565.53. For the hostels, I mostly stayed in dorms. I tend to stay in dorms. I prefer 4 to 6, up to 8 beds. I really try not to do any more than that. I just don't really like that. I have social anxiety, so smaller dorms definitely work out best for me. And if I can get an all-female dorm, I will pay a few extra dollars, even though they really shouldn't be charging more, but I will pay a few extra dollars for an all-female dorm compared to a male dorm. I find that they're a little cleaner, and girls, sorry good boys, but girls don't seem to snore as much. So that's just my preference, but I did definitely stay in mixed dorms. And I don't think I stayed in any dorm larger than 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 8. So yeah, on this trip at least. Now, if you compare it to last year, so last year I spent $3,727.42 on accommodation. So you can already see I spent more last year for accommodation for a shorter period of time. And the reason I did that is because I stayed in a lot more private rooms, which add up. I only stayed in a couple of dorms last year compared to this year where it was like mostly dorms. And I also did stay at a couple of Airbnbs last year, which I don't think I stayed in any Airbnbs this year in Australia. The next category is rental car. So this year, I did 3 rental cars. So I did my rental for my road trip that was 3 weeks. I also did a day rental in Cairns, and I also did a Uber car share, which no longer exists unfortunately, but I did one, again, another day rental in Byron Bay. Last year in 2023, I did 2 rentals. I rented a car to do the Great Ocean Road, and I also rented a camper van for like 8 days in Tasmania. So this year in 2024, I spent $1,766.20 on rental cars. This does not include gas. That's a different category. Last year I spent $720.70 on my 2 rentals. So I definitely spent more money this year, which was expected because I had the car longer. Last year also with the rental van, the camper van, I did end up getting 1 or 2 days back reimbursed for the base rental and the car insurance or the van insurance because the van broke down. I had to get a replacement. So that took time away from out of my day. So they reimbursed me. For the rental cars this year, I did not do any of the additional insurance. I declined that because I later learned after my trip last year that I get car insurance, like travel car insurance through my credit card. So definitely look into that. I have a Capital One Venture card or whatever, the free one. I don't pay, but it does give you the car rental benefit, car insurance benefit. So definitely just look into that because I did save hundreds of dollars on a supplemental car insurance. The next category are flights. So these are my flights to and from Australia, from the US to Australia. Also any sort of internal flights I had to take. So in 2024, that included my flight to and from the US, and then to Perth, and then to Adelaide and to Cairns. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 7 flights, okay? Now, I will put the disclaimer out there that I did end up using credit card points for my my round trip flight from the US to Sydney and back. So that price was knocked down about $950. So total for flights, I spent $1,228.87. Last year, this was my round trip flight to the US. Again, that's composed of 4 flights from Orlando to LA, LA to Sydney, and then the reverse of that. Also an internal flight to Melbourne, an internal flight to Hobart, and then 2 internal flights to Sydney. I did from Hobart to Sydney and then from Cairns down to Sydney. So my total for that was $2,216.42, which again was more, but I did not end up using credit card points. If I hadn't used credit card points, it would have been around the same price, honestly, for flights. So the next category are activities. So these are going to museums. These are, sorry if you can hear the dryer or the washer, it is so loud right now. But these included various tours I did, museums, day trips, overnight trips, etc. So this year in 2024, and this included my 2-night, 3-day Uluru trip or like tour with adventure tours. Total, I spent $1,150.34 on activities, which seems right for this trip. Last year, I spent $1,434.28. This included my 2-night, 3-day trip to Fraser Island, which I did not do this year. It also included my Whitsunday 1-night, 2-day boat tour, which again, I did not do Whitsundays again this year. And then I did not include in this my skydiving last year because that was gifted to me from my parents, which I still am very grateful for. The next category are groceries. So this is just food. I primarily cooked for myself. So this is breakfast, dinners from, I went to Woolworths, Kohl's, etc. I cooked for myself. For 2024, I spent $904.50. And I also feel like I should say this is all in US dollars, not Australian dollars. But you can see I've been having the conversions here. So $904.50 on groceries. Compared to last year, I spent $644.43, which again, makes sense because I spent 3 months in Australia this go round, 2 months last year, so that seems about right. Next category is gasoline, fuel, petrol, etc., whatever you want to call it. This is definitely where things started to add up. So in 2024, I spent $817.94 on fueling up the rentals, which is a lot of money, but I was expecting it because of that road trip especially. That's where 98% of the cost came from. It was very expensive, but it is what it is. Fuel is expensive in Australia, and you just have to kind of go with it. And once again, the washing machine. Sorry. In 2023, I spent $227.64 on fuel, which again, a lot of it came from the camper van. And I will say, doing the car camping versus the camper van this year definitely saved me a lot in the long run, because that $800 figure would have been so much more, because just those camper vans just eat fuel versus the rental I had, which was a SUV for the car camping, definitely was a lot more fuel economic. So anyway, the next category is local transportation. So this is any sort of buses, like local buses, the trains, trams. This also, for both years, included my Greyhound Wimmet Pass. So this year in 2024, I had the National Pass because I did use it a few times when I was in the Northern Territory. And then last year it was just the East Coast Pass. So the prices on these were actually very similar. So for this year in 2024, I spent $581.98 on that, which a lot of it did go towards that Greyhound Pass, which is a lot off the get-go, but when you break it down with how many buses I took, it actually was very, very cheap for those Greyhound buses. Compared to 2023, I spent $551.71, so very similar. The next category I'm a bit embarrassed about, and this is a category that could be zero. And for some people, it's going to be zero. For some people, it's going to be more. For some, it's going to be less. Please just don't judge me, okay? I'm very nervous about this. This next category is alcohol. So it is, I do like to drink when I'm traveling. I don't really drink a whole lot when I'm at home, but when I travel, I'm a social drinker. And it is no secret that alcohol is very expensive in Australia, along with a lot of other things. I learned a bit last year in that if you're going to go have a night out, drink a few drinks before you go out, like have like a little pregame or whatever, and then you could buy like a drink or two at the bar, which I did try to stick to that. Alcohol for 2024, I spent $451.96. It's a lot. That is a lot. But not as much as last year, and I spent more last year, and I was there for the last amount of time. Last year, I spent $503.71. And I'm going to say, this isn't justifying it, it's just a fact of the matter. There is, in the backpacking community, a huge, I'm not going to say pressure, but a lot of people do drink, okay? It is, especially in Australia, there's a huge, like, drinking presence, like drinking culture, or whatever you want to call it. So, yes, I did spend a decent amount of money on alcohol, which really, if I had cut that out, would have gotten me a lot closer to my overall budget, but it is what it is. So we're going to move on from that. Next up is health. So these are any like toiletry restocks, medicine I need to buy, etc. So in 2024, this year, I spent $325.51, which again seems about okay. A little high, but not too much. Compared to last year, I spent $193.24. And yeah, again, this seemed like a little bit high, but I put like deodorant and collagen powder and vitamins, like all that into this health category. So it does add up. So it does seem a little high, but it is just a lot of those things. Next up is travel insurance. You always have to travel. Travel insurance, I see it as a non-negotiable. You have to have it. It's one of those things, you're lucky if you don't use it, but you're happy you have it if you do have to use it. So for travel insurance, I got mine for both years through World Nomads, which is a good travel insurance, but it is pricey. On this current trip I'm on right now, I'm actually trying a different provider that's a little bit more just health focused, like health insurance focused compared to like all trip. Although my current one now does cover some like baggage and trip interruption, but not as much as World Nomads. Anyway, I'm justifying this. Travel insurance for 2024, I spent $312.07. That was for 3 months in Australia. That was just the cost. Compared to 2023, I spent $206.94, which again, I got the same like basic plan, whatever, I'll put it here, what it's called. I got that. I didn't get like the next step up. Next category is camping gear. Now, I know I spent a little bit of money last year in camping gear, but I couldn't really figure out what I spent it on. So this was really just a new category for 2024. For camping gear, I spent $158.48. And this was because when I did the car camping, because I got a car and not a van, I had to get cooking gear and like an air mattress, actually two, because mine popped, bedding, etc. So it did add up, but really still, again, it came down, the price on it was significantly less than the camper van. In 2023, I say zero because I just didn't track that category. If I had to guess, I probably spent around $30 or so on camping gear. Next up is clothing. So these are just shirts I bought, or like sweatshirts, like beanies, whatever. Stuff I kind of was expecting, and then some things I wasn't. In 2024, I spent $103.70. And in 2023, I spent $68.77. Next up is laundry. When you backpack for a long period of time, obviously you're not bringing 3 months worth of clothing. You're bringing about a week or around a week's worth of clothing, so you're gonna have to do your laundry. Laundry does add up, but it's better than, you know, carried around a ton of baggage. For laundry, I spent $84.91 in 2024, and in 2023, I spent $66.74, which again seems about right because I spent one extra month this year versus last year. A way to save some money is to get the laundry detergent sheets versus having to buy detergent every single time you do your laundry. And it packs down really nicely, and it weighs like nothing. And you do I would say I saved probably about $15 or so. Not a lot, but worth it in my opinion. Next up is phone. So I got a physical SIM card both times from Telstra. I think I got like 20 or 30 gigs for each top up. So for this year, I spent $82.68 on my SIM card. And in 2023, I spent $61.58, which again makes sense being there for an extra month. I needed more phone data. Next up are souvenirs. So these are postcards, little trinkets, any sort of gifts I got for people, etc. I spent in 2024 $79.78, and last year $54.67. I don't buy a ton of stuff because it's just, I don't have the space for it, but I buy little things here and there. Next up is miscellaneous. So these are any sort of donations or gifts or whatever. I guess I just said gifts or souvenirs. Gifts are actually in the miscellaneous. Basically, miscellaneous is a catch-all for any sort of purchases I make that don't fall into any of these other categories. So for miscellaneous in 2024, I spent $74.06. And last year in 2023, I spent $108.25. Next up is eating out. So like I said, a lot of my food budget goes towards groceries because I cook a lot. But I did have a little like things at markets or whatever that kind of fell into the eating out category. So in 2024, I spent $43.03. You can see, again, I don't eat out a lot. And in 2023, I spent $21.85. The final category here is my visas. So I went both times on an ETA or an electronic travel something. I don't know. But anyway, it's something that for US citizens and other countries you can get. It's about 20 Australian dollars. So in 2024, that came out to $13.11. And in 2023, it came out to $13.37. It's just the conversion rate, but it was 20 Australian dollars. It's valid for a year. You can go as many times as you want within a year, 12-month period, but you can only stay for 3 months at a time. Something I need to mention here for 2024, one thing I did not include were the Hoka. So I got a new pair of running shoes, and I didn't include that just because that's something that I would have gotten no matter what. It just happened to fall that I needed it during this trip. In my mind, I didn't see it as a travel expense, so I didn't include it, but if you want to, it was like $140 something. So also, actually both years, my flight home, well, in 2023 my flight home was canceled, so I had to take a different flight. I had to stay an extra 2 days. In 2024 my flight was so delayed that I wasn't going to make my flight, my connecting flight, so I just stayed an extra day. So I did have some reimbursements from the airline. So in 2024, that meant I needed to stay one extra night in my hostel. I ended up upgrading to a private room because Delta was going to pay for it. And then also meals and transportation. So Delta reimbursed me $136.31 in 2024. And in 2023, I had to stay 2 additional nights. Again, same hostel. I stayed in a private room again. They also covered my meals, accommodation is private. They covered my 2 nights in the hostel, meals and transportation. Delta reimbursed me in 2023 $248.10. So just kind of putting that out there. So you might be asking, what is the grand total? Well, before I do that, I want to do the daily averages. So in 2024, my daily average was $103.31, which is kind of high, but I think especially for like a real budget backpacker, but for like a flash packer, that seems about right, like the $110 per day range seems about right for Australia. For obviously for other countries, it's going to be a lot, but for Australia, this seems about right. In 2023, my daily average was $122.97, and that primarily was because I was staying in privates a lot, and I did a little bit more activities. But again, like that price is on the higher side, but I know some backpackers who spent significantly more than that on like the daily average, and then others who spent significantly less. I mean, you could do Australia for like real shoestring, maybe like 60 to 70 a day, but it is, and maybe even less, but most people I just talked with were spending anywhere from like 70 for like real shoestring up to about 110. So I was kind of like in the higher end of that range, but still kind of in that average. Now, I said my budget for both years was $10,000, and I definitely did go over that. So my grand total for, I'm going to say 2023 first. My grand total for 2023 was $10,821.70. For 2 months, that's a lot. That is a lot. And to even have skydiving gifted to me, that was a lot of money. So I took that figure and was like, okay, well, I want to spend less and spend more time in Australia. So this year, I did more dorms. I did a week volunteer work, so that was 1 week less of accommodations I need to get. I only did one overnight like activity. I did not redo with Sundays. I did not do Gari again. There were a lot of things I did not, like I didn't do skydiving again, even though I wanted to. So there were a lot of things I didn't do again. So like a lot of high ticket items. So in 2024, my overall budget or overall spend was $10,744.63. I ended up spending less money for a longer period of time this year, but I did still go over budget, unfortunately. There's no way around it. Australia is a really expensive country. I don't necessarily regret going over budget. If I had not drank and maybe I don't know, stayed in like a few like slightly less nice hostels, I could have gotten that number down. But overall, I was really happy with the way I spent my money. I think I was a lot smarter this year, and just kind of really prioritized trying to find more free experiences or low cost experiences, and just focusing on being in nature a little bit more compared to like in museums and the sort. So anyway, that is how much I spent. Again, it was a lot, but I don't regret it. I'm not planning on going back to Australia, at least until, well, actually I kind of do know when I'm possibly going to go back, but it will be a bit. So I'm not planning on going back this time or the same time next year. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to leave your questions in the comments below. If you have a comment, just be nice. It is kind of scary to talk about money, but I do think videos like this are so important because, especially for a place like Australia, it is really difficult to really gauge how much you're going to spend, and I think a video like this can help. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video, found it useful and insightful, and take something away from this. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps get this video out to more people, helps me out in that unknown YouTube algorithm. And also be sure to subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends, because I'm really trying to grow this community here on YouTube. You can also follow my travels in real time on my social media channels, which are here on the screen. And with that, I am going to do some work because, like I said, I'm here in Poland at the moment recording this, but I have a lot of work I gotta do, so it is a work day. But thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to wander far and wander often. Catch you all later. Bye!